And I don't understand this. I don't understand complaining. Well, the roads are too bad. You have an 82-year-old woman out there with a bunch of other 70 and 80-year-olds in their all-wheel drives and their four-wheel drives, and they can get out there. So, I mean, seriously, you guys sit there
Jenn,
and put out all these videos on taxpayer dimes, rappelling out of helicopters like you're some kind of fucking heroes.
and you and
These
I
senior
both.
citizens are heroes. They're saving more lives than the Border Patrol is. Welcome back, everybody. This is Jenn Budd, former senior patrol agent with the United States Border Patrol. I am with Marianna Trevino-Wright. This is the second weekly podcast of Border Patrol Watch. And today we are going to talk about no more deaths in Green Valley Samaritans and what is going on out in Sasa Bay, Arizona. But first, I want to welcome this morning my good friend, Marianna Trevino-Wright. How are you doing this morning?
I am doing very well today. Happy to be here with you as always, even though we discuss the sublime to the utterly ridiculous in terms of U.S. policy, Border Patrol practice, and what's happening at this moment in history.
Yeah, I was just telling Marianna before we got on air that I spent the whole weekend just being like, I just don't know what else to do. I don't know what else to do watching Biden go completely, so far to the right that the Border Patrol union stopped dead in its tracks and was like, yes, sir, may I please have another? It was just like, all of a sudden Biden's the worst. And now it's like, oh, well, Biden gave us a raise and Biden did this and Biden did that. So we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. And they're just like, oh,
Well, and
just
this
watching these people just flip back and forth with no morals, no ethics, no nothing.
Well, and this horrible border bill that was, that passed the Senate and was really a bunch of stuff in it that was right of Trump policies. It was mind blowing to those of us who follow this kind of stuff.
The president of the union came out in support of Biden's bill because it is essentially the Republican bill. It's everything that Trump wanted. But the only reason why Trump doesn't want it right now is because it would give Biden too much power. He wants the border to still be in chaos. And quite frankly, even with all this passing, the border's still going to be in chaos. You're not going to stop migrants from crossing.
Yeah.
So and you shut down the asylum system, we're just going to go back to Title 42 and have lots of people crossing. So nothing's going to change. I'm happy it didn't pass.
I'm happy it didn't pass too, but my God.
In the areas where migrants are just walking across and they're standing in line in big numbers, you see that in Sasa Bay, you see that in San Ysidro in California, you see it in Jacumba in California, you see it in Eagle Pass, where you're seeing a lot of migrants crossing, where they're waiting in line, waiting to be processed, standing on the border wall, waiting for Border Patrol or somebody to show up, is because that's where the Border Patrol has set up their what they call open air detention sites. And for short, we call those ODEs, or open air camps. I usually use open air camps. And the Border Patrol has kept these secret for a long time. The nearest I can tell, they started in the Douglas area, the Naco area, which would be the Sonoran Desert of the Tucson area. This is where the majority of migrants die because of the weather. It gets very cold at night, but it also obviously gets extremely hot. And so there are probably tens upon tens of thousands of bodies out there that have never been found.
But Jenn, I have to interrupt. You're saying
ahead.
this has been going on for a long time, but I need you to tell people, what a long time means. This is not something that Border Patrol began doing 30 years ago.
No. When I say a long time, I mean, if you don't know anything about the Border Patrol, you're just seeing it now because it's on TV. You see these outdoor camps on TV. And so when I say a long time, they were going on since as far as we can tell, about 2018, 2019, they started in the Sonoran Desert.
So this
And
is relatively recent.
it is
Uh,
relatively recent. It just feels like it was a long time ago.
well, it
Because
feels like a long time ago.
everything feels like a long time ago right now.
The last 8 years have been, a slog mired in some of the most horrible things we've seen in this country ever. I mean, right along with the horrors of the antebellum South and Jim Crow, the rise of the KKK, and all of that. That's a whole nother podcast explaining how Border Patrol is rooted in all of that. But what we're seeing now, it's really a level of cruelty that, people get arrested for leaving their dogs out in the cold to die. But no one's being arrested for leaving human beings out in the heat and the cold, caged up, just like dogs, to die in the elements. It's unbelievable.
I wouldn't be doing myself justice if I didn't say that I have a big article that I've been working on for many months with consequence form. And so I talk about with at least the first ones that I've ever found existed, and that came from John Kirk, who's a photographer and videographer down in the Arizona area. And he stumbled upon them, and that's how we have pictures of them. And he said, "What are these all about?" And they immediately tore them down. So that's the first time we ever saw them. The first part of the article is my experience with the outdoor camp in Del Rio in 2021, in September of 2021, and how that just left me and left my friends who I was working with just to the point where we don't even talk about it today. We've never talked about it. And it
It's
was
just too
completely,
difficult, too
it's too
painful, too
difficult for them.
traumatic.
Yeah, I mean, because they were all of color. I was the only white person, at least in our group, and just watching them go through that, and then seeing it also from the inside, knowing law enforcement and how they act. And so I know what law enforcement's doing when they're stopping them. I know what they're saying when they say, "Well, your taillight's out." "Oh, well, it's not out now. Let me give you a warning." So
Well,
I know what they're doing when they do that.
and as you experienced with this group of activists and lawyers and who are witnessing and documenting what is happening, you saw that every layer of law enforcement was working together: the local
Mm-hmm.
police, the sheriff's department, the parks police, the
Yeah.
the feds at every level. And that's what we see and experience here in Mission. I had I've had employees coming to work who are pulled over like every other day on the way to work by Texas DPS and told the exact same thing: your taillight's out. And then when they test it, it's miraculously working now, but it wasn't working when I decided to pull you over. And I pulled in behind you when you stopped. So I never turned on my lights,
They have all those,
triggering
yeah.
triggering the camera in my car,
Oops.
um, to document that your taillight actually was not working. And these are basically crimes being committed by law enforcement, which shouldn't be any surprise to anybody. But a lot of white America doesn't have any experience with this sort of stuff. They really don't. They don't understand the militarization and the culture of oppression by jackbooted thugs on the borderlands.
I'd never seen anything like September 2021 in Del Rio, Texas. It scared me, and I don't necessarily feel scared around law enforcement. And the only car that didn't get harassed, I think we were there for 3 days, 4 days, but the only car that didn't get pulled over was mine because I was in the front seat, and my driver was a woman who presented as white, although she is not. She's of mixed race.
So these camps in Del Rio, and the camps that John Kirk discovered. Once, there was this media firestorm on them. They knew that everybody was coming. They cleaned them up. They made everybody disappear. But in Mission, Texas, and I think like March of 2021, correct me if I'm wrong, when they started keeping humans in cages under Ansalduas Bridge, instead of cleaning it all up, they invited the media in. They had GOP House members and senators come, and
Well, but they invited which media?
they only invited the right wing media. And
Right.
and then the stories that were told, you and I are friends, and you visited me here, because both of us try to only talk about things we have firsthand experience about. That outdoor camp in Ansalduas, the media reports coming out were like, oh, it's so remote. There's so many people crossing. They have to keep them in these
Temporary.
impromptu.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They call them also temporary sites or something like that. Like we're
yeah,
so
the
overwhelmed, we're just staging them here for a minute or so.
exactly. We're so overwhelmed. We've set up this temporary site. We don't have enough buses or vans or personnel to transport them miles away to the nearest processing center. And when you came to see me, I took you to two bars. Yes, like honky tonk bars,
Texas bars, they look like old barns. Yeah.
right up
They're
against
kind
the
of
border
falling
wall.
apart.
Remember?
Yeah.
One was actually under the Ansalduas Bridge. The
Hmm.
other one was at an opening, a permanent opening in the border wall. And I showed you on Google Maps and everything exactly where the outdoor detention center was. And we drove the 2 miles to the infamous Ursulus Border Patrol processing center. So it was
Right.
two miles. This was not remote at all. Migrants were being held under the international bridge behind a honky tonk where the migrants in cages and the GOP senators and Breitbart and anybody there could literally hear the live music playing and the Winter Texans and community members clinking the beers from their buckets, their long necks, and singing along with, you know, Garth Brooks, I got friends in low places. This was not some remote place like I presume Sasabe is. I haven't been there. But
Sasabe is very remote, but yeah, the area that you're talking about, the Ansa Bridge, I remember when you took me there, I stopped and I turned and I looked at you and I was like, it's the right bridge because I was pretty sure from what they were showing on TV that this was out in the middle of nowhere. So Sasabe is known as, it's a very small town on the Mexican side. Not sure if there's any kind of town on the north side. I've never been to the Sasabe port of entry. Sasabe is known as the cartel town. That's where a lot of cartel operatives live. And what happened prior to the Sasabe Border Patrol's open air detention site being established was that Sasabe had a cartel war a couple of months ago. And they killed a lot of people and they killed a lot of local citizens. And in that area, there are a lot of different Samaritan groups. Samaritan groups often drop water for migrants and food for migrants. They search for migrants in distress. Many of the younger Samaritan groups go to hike and try and find the missing bodies of migrants and bring them back to their families. And then there's the Green Valley Samaritans, which is made up of senior citizens. They're mostly retired. And that is because Green Valley is a little town just north of the border in the Tucson sector. And it's a retirement community. And so one of my really good friends, Barb Lemon, which I hope to have her on sometime, although I don't know that she's too into this kind of stuff, but she's a she's a retired nurse. She's like 82 years old, and she goes out there as much as she can physically handle it to try and help these migrants. And so they had this war going on, and it was reported here locally, but not nationally. And they were trying to get, because they do work down in Sasabe, they were trying to get people that they work with, nurses and doctors, across to safety, just temporarily in the United States until the war died down. And CBP closed their doors, and people were just flinging themselves over the wall trying to get away from all this violence. And of course, CBP's like, fuck it. And then Border Patrol wasn't letting people cross and stuff. Well, the violence is kind of, I mean, the town's pretty much torn apart. And at the same time, what the Border Patrol has done, at least under the Trump administration, is the area from the Tohono O'odham Nation, the TO Nation, which is a native tribe out there in that area, from their land out to Sasebe, is my understanding. Originally, they didn't cross a lot of migrants through that area because there was no infrastructure on the north side, no roads and stuff to help migrants get through all those areas. It's not to say that migrants didn't cross at all, but they certainly didn't cross in the huge numbers that they're crossing now. So once Trump built that wall and built the infrastructure around it out there in Sasebe, then they started smuggling through there. And so essentially, what ended up happening is so many people started coming through that area because Border Patrol made an open air detention site there. And so then the humanitarians, like the Green Valley Samaritans, come out. They are also working with a group called No More Deaths that leaves a lot of water out for migrants, and they save a lot of migrants. They've even saved Border Patrol agents' lives with water and hiking and helping people. And so these two groups, No More Deaths, in Spanish, that's known as No Más Muertes. This is wintertime in the desert, and out there they're getting rains. The rains that we had last week here in San Diego are now there, and now they have snow. And so they've had children having to go, even out here in Acumba in California, in our desert, we had to send children in with hypothermia. They're sheltering in porta potties out in Acumba. It's insane what's going on in these filthy, disgusting. I just don't even have words for it. This is what Nazis did to people. This is what Nazis did to people.
And this wintertime scenario it's criminal, as people get prosecuted for leaving their dogs out in these conditions, but not human beings.
More deaths yesterday, last night, they put out a notice. And I mean, aside from having to deal with the militias and Bannon's border bros constantly filming them and saying that they're aiding and abetting in trafficking and stuff, this is what they're having to deal with. So this is directly out of Sasebe, Arizona area. Approximately 400 asylum seekers waited along the border wall near Sasebe, Arizona yesterday in hopes of being picked up by the Border Patrol. Now, let me just pause right here because I know a lot of you are going to say, well, they just shouldn't have crossed. Well, it's legal for asylum seekers to cross anywhere on any of our borders and go up to an immigration officer and request asylum. That is a legal way to request asylum. Okay, so going on with the letter, Border Patrol never came. During the night, snow and freezing temperatures set in. By this morning, a few inches of snow had accumulated, and humanitarian aid volunteers found hundreds of people still stranded along the wall with no sign of a Border Patrol response. Volunteers with No More Deaths, Tucson Samaritans, that's another group, and Green Valley Samaritans began evacuating people to the Border Patrol station in Sasebe. Now, I've known about this for a while. Green Valley Samaritans, Barb had called me in and asked me what my recommendations were because they kept trying to get Border Patrol to come out and pick up these people and take them to safety. Even before this storm, there were other storms where people were freezing to death and in terrible conditions, people having heart attacks because, you know, and all sorts of stuff in this cold. It can trigger other problems and so forth. And I knew about this, and they had gotten to the point where they said they won't come out and pick them up. We need to put them in our vehicles and take them to the Sasebe Forward Operating Base, or FOB. So we say Sasebe Station, basically, is what it is.
Why would Border Patrol not come pick them up? Isn't that their job to patrol the borders and to apprehend? All they do is promote their apprehension numbers, and then now they're gotaways, the invisible
How
people.
badass they are with their four-wheeling trucks and all the gear they have and helicopters and stuff.
Well, yeah. and the border wall system, which again, people don't understand. There's border wall and then there's border wall system. which all of the other infrastructure and accoutrements of this actual barrier. And one of the things that they build in what Border Patrol calls their enforcement zone, which is a dead zone, an area devoid of vegetation where they don't want people, animals, plants, anything obscuring their view or their ability to maneuver in this
Devoid
dead
of
zone.
constitutional rights as well, correct?
Absolutely. Hey, we don't need no stinking constitution. They 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 build, and these are their own words, their high-speed all-weather road. All weather, all weather. So
They
why
have
is it?
spent billions of dollars out there in that area. And then they have the nerve to say, our vans are only two-wheel drive. We can't get out there but once or twice a day to pick up migrants. And those vans only carry 12 to 13 people, I think, in them. First of all,
But
let me
we
say,
see them here transporting migrants in the bed of their pickup trucks, and
in the bed of pickup
the
trucks.
pickup
Now, I
trucks
mean,
are
legally,
all
you're not
four-wheel
supposed to.
drive. All
Yeah,
four-wheel
they're all
drive.
four-wheel. Yeah, and so are their SUVs. And so when they say that they don't have any vehicles to get out there, and then they said, well, we're too busy processing. Let me tell you something. As a Border Patrol agent that worked in Campo, I have a lot of experience doing snow rescues. Mid 90s and the early 2000s, we had some terrible snowstorms. One was in 1997. In one group, we lost like 6 migrants.
Mm.
Because they go north in the Mount Lagunas, and so we see a lot of that. And sorry, sometimes I have to stop with this. It just, I remember times where we are sitting in there processing, and we didn't have the computers and the amount of agents they have now. And they, we are just full up. It's freezing outside. We're all crowded. We've got migrants pushed to other, interview areas just because we're just overcrowded and this and that. And this is back in the day where we could get them on buses and get them out obviously a little bit faster than they do now. We're looking like 4 to 8 hours for processing or something like that. I remember supervisors running in, and there would be maybe like, 10 agents on staff, and they would leave 1 or 2 trainees and a supervisor behind to continue the processing slower, obviously, because there's not that many people. And everybody else just gets out there and goes and saves lives. And they literally tell you, as a trainee in the academy, it does not matter what somebody's citizenship is. If they come to the border and they're dying, your responsibility as a human being is to take them and help get them protection. I don't know if they do that still today, although you hear some of the old chiefs talk like that. I think that's kind of an old patrol thing. The old patrol is before 9/11, which is what I was. New patrol is after 9/11, which is what all these non-caring, unsympathizing agents are with. And so you hear a lot of us older agents from the old patrol say, I don't understand this. I don't understand this. And a lot of us know that the laws we're enforcing are causing this. And at the same time, we wouldn't hesitate to put our pens down, stop processing, get in our trucks, get our gear together, and start going and trying to find these people. And you have to work as teams, because we didn't have Borstar back then either. So we didn't have helicopters like that, like they do today. We didn't have Blackhawks. We didn't have all these skids, and we had to do it ourselves as regular line agents. And I don't understand this. I don't understand complaining, well, the roads are too bad. You have an 82-year-old woman out there with a bunch of other 70 and 80-year-olds in their all-wheel drives and their four-wheel drives, and they can get out there. So, I mean, seriously, you guys sit there
Jenn,
and put out all these videos on taxpayer dimes, rappelling out of helicopters like you're some kind of fucking heroes.
and you and
These
I
senior
both,
citizens are heroes. They're saving more lives than the Border Patrol is.
you and I are not yet old enough to even qualify by age to move into these communities. But one day you and I can join the granny brigade of old ladies who do
I
the
know.
things, who dare to go where Border Patrol fears to go.
I'm gonna be down there. I'm gonna be down there pretty soon, and I'm not gonna say
God
exactly when,
bless
but
the
I'm gonna be down there.
grannies and the grandpas who, have the courage and have the gear. Biden's DHS bills have been larger in dollars than Trump's. And these agents are getting gear like never before. And even back, way back when when these outdoor detention camps were exposed in Mission, Texas, and Border Patrol put in an emergency request for urgent aid. They needed millions of dollars, ostensibly, they claimed, for diapers and baby formula and bottles and wipies and all this other stuff. And what did they spend that money for, Jen?
ATVs and boats. And let
ATVs.
me remind you that they got billions of dollars for the end of Title 42 because they anticipated an increase, even though all of us down here said no. They're going to go to the ports of entry and try and do it legally. So you're going to see a decrease in illegal crossings. And we were right. So yeah, they get all this billions of dollars for Title 42, which never happens. The end of the rush. So where did that money go? What did they spend that money on if they still don't have enough processing centers? I'm going to tell you what's going on is in the Border Patrol, they've designated this is a processing center. This is a holding center for a migrant. And there are lots of different interview rooms. There's lots of rooms that aren't being used that they could put people in to keep them warm, to keep them safe, and this and that. But those are technically not, as they would say, illegal immigrant rooms. And so they can't go there. So they have all these protocols and bureaucracy that we didn't have back in the day because we just were used to doing what we had to do with what we had. And now you have these entitled Border Patrol agents who weren't even born back in the day. They were just a wet dream spilled on their dad's sheets at night when I was out there hiking. you know, and they're just like, oh, we're just so overwhelmed and this and that. So they're saying that they're just absolutely overwhelmed. They can't get out there. They're processing too much. This doesn't make sense when we're talking about medical emergencies and this kind of thing and people dying. That doesn't make any sense. And then they end up saying, well, we can't go out because our vans are only 2-wheel drive. You got these senior citizens out there. And they called me and they said, what should we do? And I said, are you asking if you can put them in your cars and take them to the station, which is, I don't know, however many miles away, Sauce Bay Station. And then they said, yes. And I said, well, Border Patrol is going to try like they did with Scott Warren of no more deaths. No more deaths is used to this. They're going to say that you're trying to, smuggle them. They have attorneys and this and that. My suggestion, and I'm not an attorney, but my suggestion was that they call and say, this is what we're going to do. And you write down the names of the people you're taking, the ages of them, why you're taking them. You get that to a Border Patrol agent, or you at least leave a message, or you try and text somebody or whatever. And your whole staff knows it. And then you drive down the road and you give it to them. So that's what they were doing. So they were delivering the migrants, the asylum seekers, to the Border Patrol agents because the Border Patrol would not go and pick them up. And so they were informed, Border Patrol was informed of the situation, but did not plan to drive out and address it, is what they say. No More Deaths goes on to say, as the snow melted and road conditions turned muddy, volunteer vehicles continued. Senior citizen volunteer vehicles continue to evacuate people despite threats of arrest in anticipation of more dangerously cold conditions tonight.
And by dangerous, they mean life-threatening. Let's be very clear. We mean life-threatening.
Now Border Patrol is refusing to allow more people into the station to be processed. I have a picture of them with asylum seekers standing outside the station in line saying, Border Patrol, would you please open the door and process us so that we can then get to our families in need? And Border Patrol is refusing to do it. At the time of this writing, which was last night, There are over 250 people left exposed to the elements outside of the Sasabe station. Despite persisting for over 3 months, Border Patrol has failed to adequately allocate resources to address this ongoing concern. So these camps, Border Patrol is refusing to provide water. They refuse to provide any kind of outdoor shelter. Most of them, maybe if you're lucky, you have a porta potty or two, though usually not. They don't provide any food, any water, any medical assistance. This is all being done by volunteers. And all the donations from this is just being done by volunteers. No federal money is being put towards any of this.
And then this is kind of an aside, but then the government, the Border Patrol Union, the Bannon Border Bros claim that these humanitarians are pocketing the money and actually using it to fund caravans and things like that, and to bring more migrants over so they can vote as Democrats. The militia media, the Bannon Border Bros, the right-wing outlets, everything that they say is the opposite.
They're projecting, just like Donald Trump does.
Yeah, of actually happening. So
it's interesting. The people who are getting rich off this kind of stuff are your Bannon media bros. They are your right wingers that I don't know how these people can afford these giant trucks and all this stuff and the way they ride around with their flags, and yet they don't seem to work. And yet their thing is, well, you tell Democrats they need to work. I'm like, you freaking people need to go to work. You guys are doing nothing but driving around with your Trump flags and stuff. And so it's funny. Those are the people that are making some money off of doing this stuff. I know these people, the Samaritans. I know no more deaths, a little bit, not much. These people are not getting rich off of any of this stuff. Attorneys who help asylum seekers get their paperwork in order, all they're doing is making it so that when they get to CBP for their appointment, they're actually helping CBP, because then they're not wasting CBP's time and stuff. And this, whenever somebody says, well, I just want them to do it the legal way, they know there's no legal way for the vast majority of migrants, like 95%, 98%. I mean, it's huge. Like there is no legal way. We have narrowed it. And that's something that they never taught.
Well, and they don't even know what the legal way is. None of them understand DACA. None of them have visited a port of entry. None of them understand any of the laws related to this. They want people to get in line. There is no line now. And
there's no line.
It was easy to kind of show people that when Trump forward deployed CBP, Customs and Border Protection agents. Those are the ones at the bridges who inspect your papers and inspect your vehicles. The ports of entry.
The gals in blue.
The gals in blue, the guys in blue, forward deployed them on the bridges to the middle of the international bridges, which is where, you can stand there with 1 foot in Mexico, 1 foot in the US. And he put them there in full riot gear so that no one could get in line. No one.
The thing about these outdoor camps is the Border Patrol is portraying them as being out of control, unnecessary. It's just suddenly these people show up and we have to create these camps. One of the things that I say over and over again, it's not possible for large groups of migrants to move through Mexico without CBP and Border Patrol knowing it. We have people in Mexico that are watching this. We have CBP and Border Patrol that are watching this. We have National Guard, the intelligence of the U.S. Border Patrol and of CBP. I can assure you and attest, they have access to their WhatsApp groups. They are listening. They know where they are at all times. We have invested billions of dollars into Mexico so that they tell us all this stuff.
There are going to be people who listen to this who don't believe us, and they need to go to some third party like the state of Texas or the US government to research the truth of what you and I are talking about here. And so it's not just knowing where the migrants are going. In some cases, it is actually guiding and steering and and
Hmm.
and poking and prompting them. And the Texas Tribune published a story, I guess last year in 2023 or 2022, and it was based upon an official government investigation into the Texas National Guard. And, I said from the beginning, Operation Lone Star and U.S. Border Patrol are working hand in glove. This is not an
Yes.
adversarial thing. It may look like it. They may, Abbott talks a big game. The Biden administration remained silent up until very recently. Now
Well,
they're
and the
they're
Border Patrol Union just came out and said that they don't support what Biden is doing. They support Greg Abbott, and that their
exactly.
agents will support Greg Abbott. So there you go.
Well, and I have actually, dealt with Texas National Guard and had them tell me, and I recorded these things, ma'am, we take our orders from US Border Patrol. I know this to be true, but from this government investigation, over, 750 documents, they verified that the Texas National Guard was operating a secret intelligence unit, which they have no authority to do, in these WhatsApp groups, mobilizing the Haitians and, telling them, for example, you need to move, try to cross the border on September 16th. And people in the US won't understand the importance of that date, but that is Mexican Independence Day. 16 de septiembre is Mexican Independence Day. So just like July 4th in this country, it's a federal holiday. Nobody's going to be at work. So they are telling Haitian migrants, who also would not know what Mexican Independence Day is, that this is the day you run for the border on September 16th. All we know from the investigation is that a handful of named and identified Texas National Guard people and Texas Military Department people were responsible for this. And I mean, we'll probably never ever be known who was actually responsible because they protect command. Command always has some kind of plausible deniability. Oh, I didn't know my men and women were doing that. But
They misunderstood my orders.
yeah, yeah, they misunderstood. Oh, I'm sorry. We need to improve our training in that area. Thank you for helping us identify that gap. Um, or they will be disciplined. Are they ever disciplined, Jen? Were you? Well, you were a woman and a gay woman in Border Patrol, so I assume that you may have faced um, discipline that was, I don't know, punitive, retaliatory. But our Border
Well, I was raped
Patrol,
in the academy, so yeah. And they covered it up, so yeah. That's how my discipline went.
oh my
Yeah.
God.
I mean,
Oh,
it just it's just it's impossible. I mean, the fact that 14, 15,000 Haitians show up at one camp and they all know the specific GPS location. One Fox News reporter, and he is I'm not sure if he's a Mexican citizen or not, but he's usually down in Mexico. He was telling Fox News, no, we just the migrants, we meet the Mexican immigration officials, which are pretty much paid by the United States, and they tell us, you have to pay this bribe and you have to pay us so much money, and okay, this is where you're going to go. Here's a little slip of paper with the GPS coordinates of where you're going. So somebody's giving them GPS coordinates of exactly where to go, that then creates these long lines on the border out in Sasa Bay, or these long lines in Lukeville, or these long lines in San Ysidro, or come at these camps. It's creating the visuals that they want. And so they are using these officials to then coordinate and make sure the migrants, instead of crossing in small groups of 20 all along 2,000 miles of border in which the press would never be able to see, oh, wow, now they're just all at Eagle Pass, or now they're just all at El Paso, or now they're, wow, this is really great for our cameras. It just so happens that the migrants who are walking thousands of miles, who have no money, who speak different languages and don't know anything about the southern border or the laws of the United States, they are so well organized that they just happen to be able to get GPS coordinates and show up at the same place at this. Come on, people. Come on.
I mean, if people open their eyes and accept the truth of this,
It's coordinated chaos.
and yeah, and it's destroyed. It's the tail wagging the dog.
But since 1994, we've been doing this, and the Border Patrol just keeps excelling their, expanding their violence, expanding their brutality, and they keep blame. Well, now, I mean, just think about it, Marianna. As somebody who was trained in the Border Patrol, how to 4x, how to drive through snow, how to drive through mud, who has hiked and trudged, had to hold my gun belt up high because I was in waist deep water. I mean, and they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, we can't get out to the border road, which we built,
Our
all
high
terrain border,
speed, all weather road in our
all
four
weather
by
road. We can't get
vehicles.
out there to pick up some migrants."
I have a question for you, and it may
Yeah.
relate directly to this from Barb. You know, you're talking about back in the day.
Mm.
Back in the day, your field stations, which are federal government outposts, did you
Hmm.
lose electricity? Or did y'all have
All the time.
generators and
We didn't even
yeah?
have potable water at Campo. You're supposed to be the first responders, but yet you're like, I don't know if we can get out there, and I don't know if we can do it. And it's just the lamest excuse ever to sit there and say that, I'm sorry, our four-wheel vehicles. We don't have any four-wheel vehicles. I mean, it's just absurd. Yeah, I mean, Border Patrol are the king and queens of four-wheeling. We are the king and queens of four-wheeling. Nobody does it better than us.
You're talking about these GPS points and
Hmm.
migrants all showing up in this one particular area, and then they cross, and we have these outdoor. This is exactly what the union and the right wing media and our actual government are doing on the daily.
It's just a
It's
game to all of them. It's a game to all of them. And the people who are making money are the Border Patrol agents who make over $100,000 a year. The people who are making money are your defense contractors who are making billions of dollars every year. And the politicians who then get political donations from those people. You know who's not benefiting from it? The migrants. The migrants are the ones what is so dangerous about our southern border? The danger on the southern border is dangerous for migrants.
Well, not only
Migrants.
are the migrants not benefiting, but this game, this very lucrative game, is part of the reason that we in the United States can't have nice things. I mean, my father-in-law is, retired, and he served in the US military. And, in the height of the Trump family separation, US taxpayers were paying for-profit detention centers, and this is documented, you can Google it, $775 per day per child for immigrant children separated from their mothers and fathers and grandmothers to be, detained in the United States. Imagine if our Social Security recipients and our military veterans and people on disability in this country were able to receive an additional $775 a month. Never mind a
Mm-hmm.
day, a month. But you
Mm-hmm.
can't have that, not because the migrants are coming, but because your elected officials create these policies and approve these contracts with for-profit entities that contribute to their reelection campaigns, that employ lobbyists who take them on nice vacations and
Mm-hmm.
and different things like this. This is the reason we can't have nice things. This game that harms US citizens and migrants both.
I'm going to say something very controversial. I've been thinking it a long time. I say it sometimes offhandedly, but Border Patrol is not on the southern border as much as even we used to be in the 90s. There are not as many agents on the southern border as when we had 10,000 agents, and now we have twice as many. Now, you could say, well, that's because they have more cameras and they have more sensors and they have all this, and the agents are further back from the borderline and this. I rarely see a Border Patrol agent on the border, driving up and down the border, sign cutting the border, and this and that. Rarely. And what I am seeing is in Texas, I see Texas peace officers, meaning Texas DPS, Texas sheriffs, Texas local PD. I see National Guard doing Border Patrol jobs. I'm seeing this in Arizona, where they claim they don't have enough people and all this other stuff. I see this in California, where a whole lot of Border Patrol agents are always standing around, smoking, spitting out their dip, laughing it up and this and that. And yet they claim they're so busy and all this other stuff. But I don't see them actually physically on the border. And I'm just going to say this from here to Texas. Border Patrol agents are not in the field as much as they are claiming, and they are using your local police, your state police, and the National Guards of different states. And Marianna, you've driven up and down the river many times. You do it every week, and you keep telling me, I haven't seen a single Border Patrol agent. I haven't seen a single Border Patrol agent. The Border Patrol, I think,
Friday.
And I have no proof of this, but let me just say, I think the Border Patrol is getting ready for what Trump is promising.
Friday, my husband and I took the boat out on the river, and we launch at a public place. It's actually a very, very nice retirement community with park models and RVs where, senior citizens and retirees drive from Michigan and all over the country. They bring their $500,000 RVs down and park them between the river and the wall. And this is the boat launch that is publicly accessible above Ansalduas Dam. It's where Border Patrol launches their boats. It's right upstream from Ansalduas County Park, where Texas DPS, Operation Lone Star, and their partners, Florida Highway Patrol and Florida Fish and Game, which are here, launch their boats. When we went Friday boating on the river, there were 2 Coast Guard vessels coming off the river. And this was like, I don't know, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 3:30. We launched and we were out on the river until dark. We never saw a single Texas, Florida, or federal Border Patrol boat anywhere on the river on our multi-hour evening cruise, photographing birds, looking for migratory birds as, spring migration is supposed to start. Nobody.
That's what I'm hearing in Arizona too. So in talking to the Samaritans and stuff, I'm like, well, where are all the agents? Are you seeing them like as you're driving down to the border? Are they sitting around at the chicken shack? What are they doing? And they're like, we don't see them anywhere. We have no idea where Border Patrol is. They, come out once a day with a van, bitch at us, threaten to throw us in jail and this and that, call us Marxists and communists, ask us if we're sex trafficking and this and that, and then they take our migrants, curse us out, and leave.
So
it's just like
I even messaged you about this because I was like, WTF, did they all take Super Bowl weekend off? Like, this would be.
They are not down here on the border, and all they seem to be doing is just taking the migrants that are showing up in the open air camps, and then the regular cops and all these other cops that you're talking about, the peace officers, they're the ones stopping the vehicles and stuff. Now, I don't know what Border Patrol agents are doing right now, but it's weird. It's weird down here.
There's an estimated 20,000 nationwide now. I mean, other than like Yeah, I'm dumbfounded like you. And the other thing people don't understand is funding. How, if Border Patrol's not there doing their job, how and why would these other law enforcement agencies like the sheriff's office or municipal PD, why would they pick up the slack or fill in the gaps or do Border Patrol job for them? Why does that happen?
You know why? Because
Because,
DHS is giving them money through all these Operation Stone Garden, all this other stuff. So
yeah,
DHS is funding these local little, that's why our little local sheriffs are suddenly just as heavily geared as the Border Patrol and all this. So the
and
Border Patrol is essentially hiring out their job. They don't
they're
want to, and they've said this for years, they don't want to do immigration anymore. They want to be the police of the United States.
and in financial terms with grants, and I bring up grants because DHS makes grants to the state governors. So in Texas, DHS is giving these grants for these operations, some of which are named, some of which are not, to Governor Abbott's office. And then the governor's office accepts the grant requests or formal petitions for these dollars from county and local police departments. And that is why none of them buck the system or speak the truth, because if they do, they don't get those dollars.
They're all
Mission,
bought. They're all
mission,
bought. And a lot of them are holding migrants for, ICE and stuff like that. So they get paid for that as
well,
well.
and also most of them agreed, and the county district attorneys agreed to prosecute migrants on these state
That's right.
trespassing charges
Yeah.
for the state of Texas, even though all you hear is our jails are falling down, they're over full, we've got no more room, we need money to build a new county jail or whatever. But then suddenly they have room for migrants, you
On
know, who
trespassing
who are
charges.
being charged by the state of Texas with criminal trespass. And it's, again, follow the money. We cannot say that enough. It's always follow the money. In grant language, this setup where their money is available, they are awarded to an entity, and then they are able to make grants or have these, you know, sub
Smaller grants.
sub
Hmm.
agencies receive the money. What that's called is pass through. So Border
Mm.
Patrol, effectively, DHS, is the grantee to the various states and other entities for these pass through dollars that
Hmm.
are now funding local police departments at the municipal and county levels to do Border Patrol's job. So they're free to do other things. And what could those things be?
This gets back to what we always end up with at the end of these podcasts is that the federal government, the Biden administration want to act like they're trying to follow the law. They want to act like they're not working with Texas. They want to file these lawsuits and say, no, we need to be able to cut this concertina wire. We need to be able to save these migrants. The entire Border Patrol operation is built on sending migrants to their deaths. That's called deterrence policies. They are working with people like Greg Abbott, and they're slowly changing our federal border system over to basically states' rights and just ceding it to the state. What I'm seeing now and seeing these outdoor camps and seeing how Border Patrol seems to be pulling away from the border, they seem to be ceding their authority to state guard and state actors, state police officers. Um, and then seeing what happened in Sausa Bay this week, where they just are refusing to even let migrants into the processing center. They're refusing to process migrants. They're refusing to even go out and pick them up. And and I think that, I mean, I'm not an attorney, and it just feels like malfeasance. I think, would you think that that's the correct word, Marianna? Malfeasance, which is willful, intentional act that injures people. This is what deterrence policies are. They're malfeasance. Instead of having an
Government
actual
malfeasance, government
government malfeasance
malfeasance.
from the top, and then it filters on down to the individual agents who are now refusing to process people, and at the same time ceding their federal authority on the border to local and state actors. So the Border Patrol is completely rogue. And I think people are failing to see the bigger picture and what they're incrementally doing with these outdoor camps, and how that helps. Number one, that's for optics, and two, it's to treat migrants like crap, and to, in their words, try and deter them from telling other people to come along. But at the same time, there is this ongoing thing where they are ceding their authority to the state and local actors. And I don't think this is just a temporary thing. I think there's purpose to this. There's a reason why they're doing this. We just haven't seen it yet. I think it's going to be Border Patrol wants to be more into the interior. They want to be more about surveillance and terrorism and narcotics. And they really don't want to deal with processing asylum seekers flat out. They just don't.